And I'm joined by Mr. Andy Cairns, of course, Therapy. How you doing, Andy?
I'm fine. How are you, fella?
Yeah, good. Thanks, man. Thanks for your time. And obviously, a couple of Fridays' time on the 5th of May, you guys released your brand new album, Hard Cold Fire. Like I was just saying to you just before we hit record, I've been fortunate enough to hear the record. It's fantastic, Andy. It's going along, seems to be going on that same recent trajectory you guys have been, Disquiet, Cleave, and now this album. It sounds like it's all going off. Did you feel like it was going along that same sort of trajectory when you recorded it, or?
Oh, thanks very much for those kind words. It's to be honest, we didn't really know until we chose the song. We'd written 24 songs
Okay.
in the lockdown, and anyone that knows therapy knows we listen to everything, so you never know what you're going to get. But with Chris Sheldon involved, who's produced Trouble Gum, he produced Cleave, he mixed High Anxiety, he did Semi Detached. He's a good friend of the band, and he basically got on board and he said, "Okay, what songs have you got? And what do you want to try and do?" And we said, well, we want a really energetic record because post-COVID, people have been through enough with lockdown. We don't, and we tend towards the melancholy anyway with therapy. I mean, we have that darkness. It can be a little bit depressing sometimes, but in an uplifting way, we like to think. But he sat and listened to all the tracks before we went into the studio. He went, okay, well, if that's what you want, I think you should go for the punchier tracks.
Nice.
And the 10 that were on the album were the ones that we thought kind of made the most sense to keep a bit of empathy in there, a little bit of high energy, a little bit of excitement. And he was right. The album clocks in at just over 30 minutes. Everything's direct and to the point, and it's very therapy.
I was
But
going to
some of the
say,
other tracks that didn't make the cut weren't like that at all.
when I listened to it, they did exactly what you just said. Though I was thinking, it does sound like a sort of what you want from a therapy record. It comes in, kicks you in the face, and then leaves quite quickly. So
Yeah, I think that's our old punk origins. I mean, people
yeah,
forget, whenever therapy started back in the hardcore punk days, there was no messing about. And last year, whenever we did our greatest hits tour, and we were looking at doing some early stuff tour. Whenever I was listening back to those tracks again, it's like 2.5 minutes long, 2 minutes 45. Somewhere down the line in the kind of 2009 to 2012, we got into the 7 minute song. You just kind of read that back a little bit this time.
you mentioned that though. That was great to tour. The 30, then 31, and then 32-year plan. I was at the Norwich Day a few weeks
Oh,
ago, back in the beginning of April. So yeah, it was a great show, man. It's good to see
oh,
you.
thank you, thank you.
No, no problem at all. And going back to the album, though, like you're saying, you've obviously already released the singles "Joy" and "Poundland of Hope and Glory." Are there any songs in particular that haven't been released yet that you're looking forward to people to seeing? Any ones that sort of ringing a bell for you?
My favorite on the album is the last track called "Days Collapse,"
Yeah.
because that I just like it. It reminds me a little bit of the early Cure, but it's a little bit therapy-ish. The opening track on the album, "They Shoot the Terrible Master," is brilliant to play live. It was one of the first ones that we wrote, and whenever we started rehearsing it, we actually got a place for a change where we rehearsed up near Ely.
Okay. Yeah.
And we were kind of in there in this barn, and we were playing that over and over again. That feels really, really good. Yeah, those two are the ones that I think I'm really looking forward to playing the most. There's also a track on it that's really poppy called "Ugly."
Yeah, I
Which,
thought that sounded like a bit of a single "Ugly" when I heard that.
yeah, and that was like
Yeah.
I wrote that after listening to "Fuel for Hatred" by Satyricon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which I really, really liked, and it was like because Michael is Mr. Metal.
Yeah.
And in fact, Shane Embry once said that he knew too much about heavy metal, which is praise coming from Shane. And I'd sort of Michael didn't even realize I liked that kind of music, and I commented, "Oh, I really like a band called Satyricon." And what's that? I said, "I've written this riff. It's kind of like Snowblind by Black Sabbath
Yeah.
meets Satyricon, but with a really, really poppy chorus." Really, yeah, played it for me. Oh yeah, I see where you're coming from.
Like you say, sometimes the oddness of a description in words, you're better off just playing the riff and just
Yeah,
going.
I know exactly.
I've certainly been in that situation. Band phone, you try and explain what you're trying to put down, unless you play it, it just doesn't make any sense.
That's true. Yeah,
But when you play it, it does make sense. So
yeah.
absolutely, man, absolutely. Like you say, you released the singles. It's been obviously 5 years since Cleave, but I'm guessing that was mainly because of COVID and everything that was going on that you didn't get to sort of follow on Cleave as quick as you would like. Did the
Yeah.
songwriting process then change between Cleave and this record because of everything that was going on, or did you still manage to get into the room when it came to recording?
Oh well, I mean, literally straight away, as soon as because we were meant to be doing tours, we were meant to be rehearsing. We had a load of space booked to rehearse because we'd written songs. As soon as COVID hit, we said, right, let's send each other remotely the ideas that we have, and let's have Zoom calls to catch up with each other.
Nice.
And like, so I mean, the second track on the album, Whoa, Neil wrote the riff, and what Neil did was Neil said, I don't have a guitar in the house. I've got this little keyboard," and he played the riff on the keyboard with I think there was a setting for distorted guitar.
All right.
So it sounds like a really dodgy 1988 sort of rave record. It was so he would send me that. I would record it on the guitar, send it to Michael. He would put it into his computer, record the bass, and we'd send the whole thing back to Neil, who would then drum in his spare room on an electronic kit.
Yeah.
And it was quite good fun. So we were constantly rehearsing these songs. And then when we did get to the place that we mentioned in Ely, the 24 songs that we had were all written. And we just had to rehearse them and like a few little tweaks. Obviously, when we get in the room together and we're with each other, we know some things change. But it was really, it was all pretty much done, because I think if we dwelt on it too much, we might have got a little bit depressed, because we were meant to do so much work. And I mean, the whole album was in the bag a year and a bit ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it had all been done and we were just sitting on it. We knew we already had to tour the greatest hits and the early stuff shows. So it was good. So it was all in the bag and done. We weren't panicking with it.
That's all right then.
Yeah.
You mentioned also you're back working with Chris Sheldon again. Obviously worked on Cleve and Troublegum and everything else that he's worked with you guys on. Do you feel that you guys sort of already, that base foundation is already there with Chris, and then it may not be with other producers always if you're going to work with someone new?
Well, Chris is very up to date and modern. He doesn't languish in his laurels, from before. So he's aware of all the new kit, all the new sounds. But what we like about him is he's so direct, and he doesn't hold any truck with the precious artist, which a band like us from the north of Ireland that have known each other for 33 years, we never had any airs and graces like that. And it's not like some producers don't want to offend the artists. So if I have an idea that I want to play this kind of in my head Robert Fripp kind of guitar figure, which isn't, it's just nonsense. Some producers will let me play that for 5 or 6 hours and then walk around it and then maybe say, well, what do the rest of the band think? Chris will just go, no, straight away. You just go, that's nonsense, don't play that. And that's kind of, it makes sense for a band like us. Obviously if there's something that we really, really like, we'll debate it, but he's very objective, which is what we need. There's Poundland of Hope and Glory, he edited that, so it didn't. There was a section where it went on for a little bit in the middle. The track Joy, we had this kind of middle 8 section which didn't make it to the cut. The opening track, we had this kind of bit which didn't really sit right. So he's very good at that. He's very good at saying, look, you don't need to do this. You don't need to put this in. But what he's great at is saying, maybe try this instead. Yeah. So he just doesn't walk in. No. He'll come in and say, well, what about trying this? And it means there's a really good vibe in the studio with him. So you arrive in the morning to the studio, you're buzzing to work with him, which it makes all the difference after all these years.
Yeah, it's great. He worked recently, or the last couple of years anyway, with a friend of mine's band, Just a Ride, and they were saying the same thing. Drew, when they were putting the album together, he sent me some rough mixes over that Drew had done. And he's like, this is all the ideas we come with, man. I was like, oh man, this sounds wicked. And then I got a text from one day saying, you're not going to believe this, mate. Chris Sheldon's going to mix it, and he was really excited about Chris.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I was like, oh, wicked, that's great. And then he's like, yeah, Chris has done a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have thought of, but I think it's because Drew at that point was a bit too close to it, so he couldn't so much. And as we all are when we're writing, and then he said, let me know what you think of this, and I'm like, it's not that he's taken away from the song, man. He's just, as I put it, he trimmed the fat out of it. The fat you didn't realize was there necessarily. He's trimmed that away, and it's singing, sounding leaner, it's sounding like a more punchy thing, which they love. So yeah, it's to see where you come from with it.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds very like Chris.
So am I right in thinking you're doing some sort of in-store dates as well? Because obviously you've just done the rescheduled big tour that you did back in April. So am I right? I think I saw something about some in-store dates that you were doing in support of the release of the album. Is that right? Yeah,
it's the album goes out the 5th of May, and I think from that Monday we're doing 4 shows. It's Kingston upon Thames, Nottingham, Oxford, and another place that'll come back to me. But we're doing 4 shows. The reason why we're not doing a full tour is that we're not long after doing. We did 2 tours last year. We did like just shy of 100 gigs, and we thought, well, people have seen us recently quite a lot, especially in the UK. So we're going to go over to we're going to do summer festivals, which are coming in now, but we're going to go to Europe in kind of September, October. But the UK and Ireland will be November and December, and we'll be able to do like a full-on show, theatre club show.
Oh, nice. How have you found organising Europe side of things now, since everything, the way that's all changed? I've seen, there's been a lot in media recently about everything that's changed with that. How have you guys found it in terms of organising?
It's a bit more expensive as a band, because we have to pay more money to travel to get gear in and out. It's a bit more time consuming coming in and out of various countries where we have to declare carnets independently, what we didn't do before. But last year it was when we started doing the greatest hits tour in Europe.
Yeah.
It took us maybe 3 or 4 gigs, and then that was it. We were used to it. We've got, the crew we've had for many years, very experienced. And our tour manager, Richard, had done a lot of research. And also he knows a lot of other tour managers that were already out there, and he was able to pick up some advance. So we kind of knew what to expect. I think it'd be a lot tougher on a younger, less experienced band, because so many people get hit at borders, and so many people didn't realize how much money it would cost, or, how much money they'd have to pay. But we did a little bit of prep in advance, so it wasn't too much of a shock. It was still, I think a few times when we came back into the UK at the end of a run of shows, we still had to wait for a long, long time in the bus to get our carnet signed off and get back in. So just to make sure we weren't smuggling any guitars back into the country.
Just store them on the underneath, you'd be all right. Just strap them on.
Yeah.
Nice. But no, with this record, I know you were saying earlier that you didn't want to focus on lockdown or anything with the record, because, like you say, everyone's sort of had a fill out, and you want something sort of the antithesis of that almost. But for me, Therapy has always been a band that's, you wrote your best stuff when you've had a lot to say. And it does sound like, once again with Cleve as well, it sounds like you've still got a lot to say on this record. With something like Poundland of Hope and Glory, for example, what was that? Where did that come from? It was in one of the most recent singles, obviously, that we can talk about.
Well, it came from a conversation, first of all, that we had about myths. And it was a very light-hearted conversation. It was when we were on tour, even before COVID, about, how things like King Arthur, the myth, but the Irish are very big on this. They'll invite myths that then they believe themselves. You always say that thing, that someone tells so many lies, they begin to believe it themselves.
Yeah.
Myths can work that way. And then we looked at, Sherlock Holmes doesn't exist, but you can visit his house in Baker Street. And we would see people like that talk about, we need to go into this with a James Bond kind of scene. Well, James Bond, Ian Fleming wrote that character, he doesn't exist. And then little ridiculous things like people playing Quidditch from the Harry Potter movies, and the fact that that so many middle-class people have now sent their kids to private school because their kids watch Harry Potter and they want to have a little photo. And it's costing their parents a fortune. And then we just thought, well, the actual state the country's in at the minute, we can do without myths. We need truth. The country's really divided, and we want people just to tell the truth for a change. And we're in a post-Trump, post-truth, post-Johnson world. And I think that the main spark of the song, it started off lighthearted about myths, and then it came to, I was watching the Proms on TV one night, and they were singing Jerusalem.
Yeah.
We will build Jerusalem, and England's green and present now. And I thought, well, there's food banks all over the country. The Prime Minister's lying to us. This isn't Jerusalem. You know what I mean? So let's stop lying to ourselves, shall we? And let's address what's in front of us. And it's the amount of poverty, the state the NHS is in, that, the people can't feed their families. That's what we need to do. And it's not a land of hope and glory. It's Poundland of hope and glory. It's a green and unpleasant land at the minute, and we need to face up to that fact and do something about it.
Definitely. I mean, in my day job, I work for cancer hospice, and so sort of not, although we're not the hospital itself, they are in front of us, we are on their grounds, and seeing the doctors and nurses going strikes, and you just think, these people are saving lives, they're doing working absolutely working their bollocks off, and then they just get the mick taken out of them. Like you say, we were all encouraged to clap our support, and now we're not continuing that appreciation in any way. It's ridiculous.
I know. My brother's a nurse. He's up in Nottingham, and he's like, I've heard stories from him firsthand, and my wife works in the care system as well.
So my sister did as well.
Yeah, and that kind of, I've just been hearing the stories from that, and all the funding's cut, and then it's just ludicrous. No one seems to be doing anything for the work class. No one seems to be doing anything for the people that need it. Yet, other people are sort of like, it's all right for people like Richie Sunak to say it'll be all okay. We all have to muck in together when it doesn't affect him personally.
No. It doesn't affect
There's no empathy for the common man there whatsoever, and it just seems to have got worse and worse after lockdown.
I totally agree. Like you're saying, you think when we go through something like this as a whole, you know, everyone's told to back together and everything else. But as soon as that kind of got lifted, then it's like, right, there's nothing here for, like you say, all us, you know, us working people who are working their backsides off to try and, you know, feed kids, feed the house and everything else. So no, when Poundland of Hope and Glory sort of entered my inbox, so to speak, I was like, or just by the title alone, I thought I'm going to like this. So yeah. So have you got any plans to release any more singles ahead of the album being released then, or anything marked up?
No, I don't think there's anything in the months ahead. I would imagine that whenever we go out to tour the UK in the fall or the autumn, that there'll be something. We might bring out another record because it would make sense, you know, because there'll have been a gap then. Hopefully we're going to do festivals are only really just getting offered to us now. So hopefully there'll be some festivals. We're certainly doing a lot over in Europe. Yeah. But yeah, I would imagine it would just make sense that before we go on tour in the UK and Ireland, November, December, there'll be something off the album.
Nice one, man. So is there any songs in particular that you're looking forward to playing live again? I remember you saying that the opening track's already working out live, but are there any others in particular that you're looking forward to smash out?
Well, there's a track, Whoa, that Neil wrote the riff off, and it's just, I love playing it because he'd written it on a keyboard with a distorted setting. It's great fun to play. The ending track, the Days Collapse, which I just love playing because it's just a lot of fun to play. And then the track Ugly, which I just think I'm intrigued to see how that goes down because it started off as a really heavy thing, it's become a really poppy thing. But we've rehearsed them all so much before we went in to do the album that I'll be honest here, you know, sometimes when we go into a record, because it was written and then recorded a little bit in the studio, before we go on tour, I almost have to relearn the parts, relearn the lyrics.
That you guys have been going for 30 plus years. I remember.
But with this, we already, it's also fresh. Yeah. So and we're all excited. And we know that they're going to be short and punchy, so we're excited to get out there and play them all.
I mean, Two Wounded Animals, I think, will go down real live. I really particularly like Two Wounded Animals and Bewildered Heard. Really enjoyed.
Oh, that's one. Actually, that's one of my favorites. And that was really sweet because we sent it to the record company, and there's a sample of David Thewlis on it from the film Naked. And whenever we send it to the record company, they can be any record company. Whenever they hear a sample, they automatically think, how much is this going to cost us?
Yeah.
So they go back and said, oh my God, you've got a sample of the actor David Thewlis and it's from a Mike Leigh movie. You know, there's only a certain amount of budget we can give you guys. And I said, well, have we tried talking to Mike Leigh? And our manager actually said, look, and he managed to get a phone number from Mike Leigh's production company. And he got a secretary and said, I'm a manager of an Irish rock band called Therapy. We've sampled David Thewlis's dialogue from a film called Naked. Yeah. And the band wanted to know, could they use it? And the receptionist phoned back and said, well, can you send it to Mike? So we sent him an audio file. And that afternoon, we got an email back going, yeah, you can use it free of charge.
That's great. That's
yeah, it was great. So fair play to him. You know what I mean? He's just such an amazing director. So we've got David Thewlis on our record, and I love that track as well because that riff's really good fun to play, and it's got a nice big chorus. Two Wounded Animals. That was the initial riff was Michael's, and he sent me a little sound file going, "This is a bit Fugazi."
Yeah, they are going Fugazi.
Yeah, and I totally got what he said, and he'd written this. It was just the main riff of the verse over and over, and then I added the chorus and a little solo bit, and that's really good because it's such a good groove. It's good fun to play that.
I can imagine. I'll be honest. When I I got sent the tracks last night, and I was changing to this afternoon. I was been working from home today, so I was spinning the album while I was working from home. And then when I got to Two Wounded Animal, I'm like, can I take a break and pick up my bass now? Would that be wrong? And my gym, just got that feel about it. I just wanted to learn that riff. It's just it's got such a good groove to it.
And I think, well, the thing was, I think it's because it's Michael, the bassist too. You know, I think because he'd written the riff. That's why. I mean, I wouldn't have written it in that timing. I might have used the same chords, but it certainly wouldn't have had that swing. And that's, well, that's what happens. That's why I think, Mike, you might write more riffs because it brings a rhythm to it that, I might overlook.
That's the thing, but you guys, Michael's always had that swing to his playing. Anytime I've seen him live, anytime, any album you brought out, Michael's always had that groove to him. So it doesn't surprise me. That's come from his arsenal, so to speak.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
So how did the songwriting process change in terms of who was writing what in this album? Was it still that sort of group mentality of everybody was throwing bits into the soup, so to speak?
Well, everyone throws bits in. There's a couple where I'll bring in, verse and choruses. and I won't think of an intro for it, or something like Two Wounded Animals, which is Michael, a bass line and a drum machine, and then Neil from Woe. But normally what will happen is someone will send out an MP3 and everyone else will listen to it. And the ones that we like, so I'll maybe send 5 or 6 ideas to the boys and they'll come back. And if they like 3 of them, then we keep those, the rest of them just discard it. And it's the same, they'll send us ideas too. And then we narrow it down. As I say, we had about 23, 24 songs that we finished, but the ones that made the album were the ones we thought made sense for this record. But yeah, we all chip in. I mean, all the lyrics and the vocal melodies I always do, but I don't have a problem with that. No one else just ever wants to do that, so I don't mind doing it. Yeah. But I like it whenever they write riffs. I love hearing what Neil comes up with, because he doesn't play guitar or bass, so he writes everything on his computer. And on the last album, Cleave, there's a track called Dumb Down.
Oh yeah.
He did the same thing, where he kind of he played it on a little electronic keyboard and said, "Could you play this on guitar?" Which, as a guitar player, is brilliant. I love that kind of challenge.
I was going to say, did you find that, because obviously he's not kind of approaching those ideas in an orthodox way, because like you say, he doesn't play guitar or bass, do you find that, like, sort of, because he's come from a different approach, so you get more interesting things to come out with rather than your straight sort of chord progression?
Yeah, oh, completely. I mean, the little if that track won the album, it starts off in a high octave down to low one, and then breaks up. I mean, I would have never thought of that riff in a million years. And it's because he was playing it with one finger on a keyboard. And being a drummer, he already had the rhythm in his head before he got the notes in order. And he just ran up and down the keyboard until he had notes in an order that he liked. And that's really refreshing, because he's coming at it from a completely different angle. He's not thinking of scales or chord progressions or anything like that. He's just thinking, these sound really good with the rhythm I have in my head. Sometimes
that's probably an advantage, definitely, because like you say, you're not coming from the this has to go into this from this chord, that chord. Like you say, Neil's just going, well, that sounds good to me. And I think that's probably why you've got that sort of still that sort of punk ethos in the sound of this record, because when you're doing the more punk rock, you aren't thinking necessarily musical scales too much with the punkier side of things. You are just thinking what sounds good, what's going to get people going, and it sounds like Neil's doing just that.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Oh, wicked, man. Andy, well, thanks for your time, man. What's the rest of the year hold out for you guys? What you got?
Well, at the minute, we're after the promo, we've got like shows beginning to come in Europe. We've got festivals. The festivals are being added all the time. That'll be on the website. But I think we're going to get on a tour bus in September, and that'll be us to Christmas all around Europe. Yeah, which we'll look forward to, actually.
Yeah, I bet, man. All right, Anil, thanks for your time, man. It's been great to chat to you.
Thanks, I love you to chat to you too.
No, great. And at the beginning of the interview, I'm going to play Poundland of Hope and Glory, because we've been chatting about that. But what song would you like us to play of yours at the end of the interview? And we'll sandwich the interview in the middle, as it were.
Play Two Wounded Animals.
Yeah?
Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Thanks for your time, Andy. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much, fella. Take care. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.